Hey everyone, so I had the opportunity to have a conversation with the author of my favorite blog, named Age of Dusk. Prince of Nothing turned out to be a great guy with amazing sense of humor, sharp mind and a fantastic view on the OSR scene. I had tons of fun discussing with him and hopefully you will enjoy it too. Now allow me for a short introduction in Polish and the interview will start. Cześć wszystkim! Gdy tylko zdecydowałem się na to, że na kanale Małej Wsi będą pojawiać się wywiady, wiedziałem, że któregoś dnia będę chciał porozmawiać z autorem swojego ulubionego bloga o nazwie Age of Dusk. Jego autor, kryjący się pod pseudonimem Prince of Nothing, to jedna z moich ulubionych OSR-owych osobistości. Bezkompromisowe poczucie humoru i krytyczne spojrzenie na OSR-owe produkty to coś, co stało się jego znakiem towarowym i na przestrzeni lat wyrobił sobie markę jednego z najbardziej wiarygodnych recenzentów na scenie OSR. Ale by już Was nie zanudzać, zapraszam do materiału i jak zawsze mam nadzieję, że Wam się spodoba. Okay, so again, it's great to have you here, Prince of Nothing. As a big fan of your blog, as a big fan of your module as well, one of them, because I have only played one out of two, if I'm correct right now. So I wanted to ask you to introduce yourself at the beginning, and then we will jump to the questions that I have prepared.
That sounds fine to me. Well, hello everyone. I'm Prince of Nothing. I'm the proprietor and writer of the blog Age of Dusk, the infamous reviewing blog. What else do I do? I'm the co-author/author of the modules Red Prophet Rises and Palace of Unquiet Repose. In general, I am somewhat infamous for my tiny shit posting articles every once in a while, and currently I'm the host of the No Art Punk competition, which seeks to drive back the overly artistic currents of OSR design and return it to the true essence of gaming. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, the no art punk is definitely something that I will want to touch. So yeah, we will definitely go back to it. But
excellent.
As a warm up, I wanted to ask you a question to maybe people can follow, who maybe some of them won't know you. But when and why did you start at your blog? And was it ever your goal to become a respected reviewer, or did it just happen? So how and when the Age of Dusk happened?
Okay. Well, this goes back a long time. I think somewhere it would have been between 2012 and no, I started in 2014. But before that, I was very active. Or fairly active on also a rather infamous blog in the OSR scene called Your Dungeon is Suck, which is still pretty controversial. But well, what it ultimately was is this was a sort of satiric blog that grew in response to well, a little bit of history, right? Like the OSR in 2012 is not the OSR now, right? So back then it was still growing, so it was kind of cliquish. It was very, very positively oriented, right? But also that also meant that there was a reluctance to criticize, and there was a sort of everyone gets a prize mentality, a little bit of backroom politics, everybody helping each other out, everybody afraid of criticizing each other, because then you wouldn't be you yourself would not be whatever positively reviewed or featured or whatever the fuck. So Yiddish, Your Dungeon is Suck, kind of grew in response to that, and in response to those excesses. And that's actually where I got into the OSR through. I discovered it through Grognardia. I don't know if you're familiar, James Malazowski.
Yes. Also, even recently finished his module, the Cursed Chateau. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been a while back. The Cursed Chateau for Lamentation of the Flame Princess. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. It's not a. It's a, what is it? It's a solid 3 out of 5. I would say it was okay. I didn't. It was all right.
Yeah, I can agree. I can agree. Yeah.
But Yeah, so I started with that, and actually, like the very first review I did was was a review of RPG Pundit's Arrows of Indra, which was fairly critical, and also had some things to say about well, like, some of the elements that were may or may not have been borrowed, right? And well, like when I did that, this was sort of like innocent trolling, but I also discovered that I kind of like reviewing. And in the meantime, I've been working on some setting stuff for Age of Dusk. I was, of course, also gaming. So yeah, I just started a blog. I threw my hat in the ring, and yeah, I just started reviewing modules. I never really had the ambition to. I didn't go. At least I didn't go into it with the idea of like, oh, I will have clout, right? Like I'll be one of the big guys in the OSR. I will determine what is good and what is not good. No, I did it because it's genuinely entertaining for me, like, and it is still. And I do think that there, especially back then, but even now, there is still just like so much room for people that are critical in the OSR. I think it still has a little bit of a problem with criticism. And obviously, one of my great examples is Bryce Lynch of like 10-foot pole, and we definitely need more people like that. So that's kind of like how I got started.
Okay, so next question would be like, is it tough for you to keep on with the reviews because you are putting a lot of them, and they are not like I don't know, 5 or 6 sentences or even when reading your reviews, because this is my beef with other reviewers, that I often see that people are not really reading what they are reviewing. Like they have some thoughts prepared, like just some through a random generator of reviews. It's like this is something that I often encounter in the internet, but I can see that you are thinking about the review, that you are reading the product, that you are producing something that comes from your mind, and that you have actually thought about what is going on in this adventure or in this product. But is this pushing out content and of course reading all of it? Is it a tough task, and is it hard for you to keep on with everything that's coming out, because OSR is a very recently puts out a lot of content? And how do you pick your products to your reviews?
Okay, there's a lot of questions. First of all, the first question is like, and I agree with you, by the way, that like most reviews lack substance, or they deal with just they're very general. There's a lack of specificity in them. So when you read that, you have a general idea of what's there, but you have no idea of like the quality, or like examples are few, et cetera, right? So I agree with that. Is it hard to keep putting it out? It's not. Well, I guess it's not hard for me because I'm interested. So if I have leisure time, I will. That's like one of the areas I would naturally gravitate towards, right? So for me, it's not hard. It definitely takes work, especially for the. I noticed with longer series, so the Temple of Elemental Evil, or if you go into like mega dungeons like Borrow Maze or Stonehell, because of my process, yeah, it does take up definitely some time, because I read every room, right? Like, and I do try to like go into it with the idea of like, well, how would this actually play? How would this work out? I try to envision what it would be like to run this, or what I would do with it, right? So I would say it is a little work intensive, but it's a hobby, right? So that's fine. That's not a problem for me. You had two other questions. I'm sorry. The other ones,
yes.
Yeah.
So the one was is it tough for you to put it out, and also how do you pick the products that you are reviewing? What's the process of recruitment to get to your blog? Is it something that you are picking, or people are sending you some pitches? How does it look like?
Well, it's a combination of methods. You mentioned that in the like, especially now, the output of the OSR is very high. but I don't really have the I don't have a mission to review every product in the OSR, I think. So that's good, right? That saves me a lot of effort. Now
Yeah, and this is something that sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but this
go
is
ahead.
something
No problem.
that I really noticed that like you don't give a shit about just reviewing the new stuff to get maybe, I don't know, maybe a lot of clicks or a lot of views, but sometimes you just go back a lot of years back and reviewing some products that are old or in terms of, I don't know, 5, 8, 10 years, sometimes even more. So this is this is definitely something that I noticed on your blog, that you are not keeping up with you don't have the aim to keep up with this. With this scene.
No, it would be a fool's errand, I think, and also it would make my my job a lot less enjoyable. No, I'll go into that a little bit, right? So my content, part of it is I'm currently accepting basically reader submissions, so I still have a little bit of a backlog. One part is just by browsing the internet or occasionally reading Bryce's blog or just by talking with people, you do hear about like certain products in the certain like new OSR modules that come out that are interesting. So that's one source as well. And I've started to really delve into the I did that before with Roll Age, right? But like currently I'm also like delving into just like the fundamentals, like the really old TSR modules that are basically the origin of D&D. And I found the process to be like very gratifying, but also I keep being amazed at how well crafted a lot of that stuff is, especially Gary Gygax's modules. So whenever I go there, I discover something new, or my understanding of what D&D can be basically just keeps growing. And if I just compare that to a lot of stuff that comes out right now that is popular, like for example, like a bunch of, I don't want to shit on OSE, right? But a lot of those OSE modules that come out right now, you can tell that there's a certain there is a gap in craftsmanship and understanding of like what you can do with the game that still that still needs to be bridged. So yeah, I absolutely think that going back to older stuff like is a worthwhile endeavor.
I can comment on the OSC stuff. I have my problem with OSC is that they usually have good ideas, but the execution of these ideas is really poor for me. Like people sell you idea, but they forget that this has to be a product that people will actually play, and that's my biggest problem with their modules.
Yeah, that's I think that's, I'm going to blame that on art punk, of course. but no, but there is that's hyperbole, right? But there is a core of truth in that what I notice is that the priorities have shifted in a way that is not healthy, right? In like the old Gary Gygax stuff, like those modules that he puts out, they're games first and foremost, right? That's game design, that craftsmanship, that comes first. There are very often great ideas behind them, right? But like the focus is always on making an enjoyable, interactive module. And with a lot of the new stuff that comes out, and the reason I blame Artpunk for it is because it's the most salient, right? It's the most egregious example of this trend. Is you see people that have very creative ideas, and I think that's a result of. For a while, I think this would have been around the 2012 era of the OSR. People were making retro clones. They were basically rediscovering what they were in a process of rediscovery of like what the old way of playing the game had been like. So you saw a lot of imitation modules, and it was all kind of, or at least there was a very, what do you call that? A very, I guess, conservative strain of like fantasy going on, very imitative, right? Like they were trying to like recapture that old stuff. So as a result of that, you get a new wave. You got a new wave they're all like, well, no, we need unique magic items. We need unique creatures. We want to like recapture the wonder that players playing D&D in 1974 or whatever would have felt, right? And if you continue that trend, you do actually see that again, people think that like having a great idea, that's the most important part of making a module, and it's not. Having a great idea is like having a good sales pitch, or maybe it determines the ultimate potential of your module. But if you have no understanding of how to turn that idea and how to integrate that into the framework of D&D, because you don't know anything, right? Then a lot of it still falls flat. You mentioned Zarkov Kowalski, having interviewed him. I think Zarkov Kowalski is one of the few like modern D&D authors that actually he has off the wall ideas all the time, and for the most part he manages to turn them into something gameable. I'm still blown away by, I think it was Thulian Echoes. That's such a great module. Holy shit. That's one good example of somebody having an idea and actually figuring out how to turn that into something gameable.
Yeah, but I also wanted to talk a bit about Zarkov, but maybe later. But just to maybe foreshadow something, I wanted to say that most of his modules, because I'm a really big fan of his work, and most of his modules, when you would say like the Cynic Dunsmouth, like weird village on a side of country, and they sound super boring. Like if you would close them in one sentence, but they are amazing for me. And same with, I don't know, going to Forbidden Otherworlds, etc., etc. So if you would close them in one sentence or two sentences just to have this sales pitch, then they are not the best to sell it to someone. But overall, it's really they are really great products, and I really like it because he often also goes with this really simple adventure structure, but doing a lot of crazy and a lot of really good work around it, and this makes it super playable for me at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm also a fan of Zarkov Kowalski, big fan. Yeah.
Okay, so sticking with your reviews, I consider your blog a special place for reviews because you almost completely, and I think it's maybe due to the art punk, but you almost completely omit the visual aspect of the product. And
yes.
And you comment on the most obvious yet so often forgotten part of the RPG product, which is its content. And that's something that seems really obvious when you think about it, but it's not actually when you search through the reviews on the internet, and you dig into the content of this adventure and lay a very good analysis of this adventure. And is it something that you have thought when you were starting your blog, or is it something that you were aiming when doing a review, or I just made it up and you never thought about it and it just came like that?
I never deliberately omit like the appearance. I just don't naturally pay any attention to it. It's something I process subconsciously, right? So if something is like glaring, if it's either striking or just ugly, and it's so distracting that I get like pulled out of the adventure to go like, oh, what is this? Like then I'll comment on it. But yeah, for the most part, I don't care. I know it's of incredible importance. So I'm not saying that if you're a module author, right, that you shouldn't pay attention to like what your module looks like. You absolutely should, right? That's one of the biggest, basically one of the biggest pulls for your module is going to be a fancy cover and a nice layout and that sort of stuff. But it's also ultimately irrelevant. It seems very important until you actually start using it, and then this is all. Most of it is a distraction. If a layout is a good layout is a layout that allows you to find the information that's contained within, right? And ultimately, you're like when you run something like that, you're interacting with with the text, right? With the content of it, and that's what I care about. So if you made a fancy looking cover and that sort of stuff, it's nice, but to me it just doesn't add anything. It doesn't add anything to what I'm trying to do with reviewing. I'm reviewing like the adventure, not your presentation of it, basically.
That's why I really liked your review of Veins of the Earth, because first of all, you have omitted the visual aspect of it, and it's really fresh, because when you stumble upon Veins of the Earth reviews, they are like 90% about how it looks like and how the scraps art is there, etc., etc.
How it's amazing. I watched it. All my hair turned brown. Oh, everything feels so much brighter now. Whatever. Yeah,
yes,
I come twice as hard. Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. No.
but have you actually read this big book? Yeah. Have you actually read this big book? And second thing that I really liked about your review of Veins of the Earth is that you have split it in the parts, and it is something also that showed me that you have actually read the product, and people who are reviewing it did not, because you said it, and you said it also here, that this is not this product is split into a very different parts, and they are not. This is not a one product that is compatible with each other. Even Patrick Stewart, when I was talking to him, told me that this is a book where you cannot use it all at once, because it often doesn't get together, and you also showed it by splitting the review onto different posts, and that also showed me that you have thought about it, that you have read it, and you have actually your opinion about it. So
it's the dreaded toolbox format that needs to die. Like I hate it. I hate toolboxes. If somebody says it's like something is a toolbox, that just means they threw some crap together. Like, that made me very angry. No, but I got I think the guy is David McGragan. Yeah, it's David McGragan. Noisms also. I think he selected that as like the best review of the year, whatever the fuck that means. But there is something to be said for definitely for looking at for dividing a review into different parts, especially when, as you say, these parts are they're not really the same product, right? Like the bestiarian veins was undeniably stunning, right? Like this was fantastic. This was very atmospheric, right? And you have this promise, and then frustration strikes when you see that like the whole, like what he tries to do, like he tries to like give you this whole system to have campaigns in the Underdark, right? But what you get is a bunch of fucking tools, and it's up to you to duct tape it together and fortify like the weaker parts, such as the actual the actual meta, the actual framework that you would require to like run an actual Underdark campaign. That was missing. That was, I think, the biggest blow to the face. But yeah, and what you end up with is again, it's still good, but that's my take on it. Again, it's like I feel anybody who would actually use the tool that he's created would probably have figured out how to do that better. And I think that was also one of my criticisms there that I think he acknowledged. So
yeah, I think so. I think so, because like I said, when I was talking to Patrick, he told me that they are not so much connected between them, but they are, like you said, a toolbox, and they are different tools. Every single part is a different tool, and it's not making a one setting. It's making rather tools to go through this setting of Underdark. Yeah. So in your case, when you are, how does it look like when you start to review a product? Because you finish the reading of the adventure of a model or whatever you are reading right now, and are you writing a post like fresh after the reading, or maybe you just give yourself some time to think about it, to have, I don't know, maybe some opinion about it a day or two later, or is there some I don't know, scheme, or is there some pattern in your reviews after reading a product?
Yeah. I think this usually while I'm reading it, I'm already thinking about the review in my mind, right? So very rarely I will need to have like something stew for a while. I have had moments when I would make a minor change in my opinion, or in my conclusion at least, when I would write it like the second I finished reading it, and then the next day I go like, maybe this was a little bit too harsh or whatever. But in general, while I'm reading an adventure, I'm already forming an opinion on it, and usually when I get to the end, so when you get to the appendix and the appendices and all the monsters and like all of the new content, usually your mind has already the conclusion is already made, right? Like, so I already know like most of the things that I want to say about it. And yeah, I just I think I have, there is a sort of implicit structure to the reviews I write. It's very it's kind of stream of consciousness, but I do know that like okay, you begin I begin with by introducing myself or whatever, tell a little bit about the background of this thing that we'll be reviewing, then whatever backstory and setup. Then you get to the actual map. I begin with the map because if in case of a dungeon, right? This doesn't apply to to everything, but to the dungeons, yeah. Because a map is so important because it determines like how all of the encounters and how all of the components are structured, and then you, yeah, it does kind of feel like there is an implicit sort of structure in my head when I write these reviews. But like I don't know, sometimes you have to take weird diversions, or if something is very challenging or very frustrating, then probably I'll I'll break my routine a little bit. But yeah, having written hundreds of reviews, at some point you figure out a format that allows you to say what you want to say and get at the essence of things without spending pages and pages and pages. So. Yeah.
Do you think maybe is there something in your head saying you that maybe you cannot fall into some kind of a pattern to not be boring or something like that? I don't know if such things come to your mind.
I think so. I think, yeah, you as a like I feel like my reviews should be again, it should be like informative. It should it should be fair in general. It should accurately represent what is being discussed. But all of those are priorities, and I think that the sort of number one unwritten priority is that, like, yeah, of course your writing should be entertaining in a way, not at the expense of all of the other stuff. But yeah, no, don't write boring reviews. Don't write boring writing of any kind. No, of course. That's also a problem with with a lot of other reviews, and obviously I am exempting I'm exempting the great Gabor Lux and 10-foot pole. Is that it's also, yeah, if you read a review, if you don't get excited, I think, or if you don't feel anything at the end of it, then yeah, why bother? Like if somebody makes a really good review, it's boring, then it's not good. It should capture the reader's interest. Absolutely.
I can tell that when reading your reviews, it really feels like someone have actually written it, like there is someone behind it. So yeah, definitely. But there is also a very good balance between the content and content and the actual module is on the first place. Like you are in the background. So that's actually a very good balance. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
sort of entertainer's folly, I think that you see this in, I think it's in YouTubers, but I'm sure it happens in other areas as well, where gradually the ultimately I am a sort of like a commentator or an observer, and yeah, it should be about the thing that's being observed and not whatever my silly antics. I mean, I have shit posting for that, right? I have a separate outlet for that sort of like for that sort of nonsense. But the primary focus of reviewing should be the thing that's being reviewed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So asking about the OSR scene. How did it change in your eyes in the course of last years? Because you are here for quite some years,
yeah.
And you have seen and reviewed a lot of products. And I see that there is a new wave of the OSR that right now people are selling pretty weird books. And this is when I talk to people who are not in the OSR and don't know, for example, these modules from 8-10 years ago, they think about the OSR, about these weird, pretty books that you buy, watch the cover,
put it on your coffee
inside,
table, yeah,
and just put it on your coffee table. So that's how the OSR is seen right now.
This is again, right? Somebody who understands my pain. Okay, wait, no, maybe because they're not in the OSR, they don't. But like, right? To me, the OSR is like, oh yeah, this is dungeons, and it's like, yeah, hardcore, rules light, goblins, right? And then it's the OSR, yeah, that's for all these whatever graphic design graduates, yeah. No. Yeah, I'll go into it. Yes, I think it has changed. Not necessarily for the better. I have a sort of again implicit chronology of the OSR in my head, and one part of that is like the reign of King James. So for a while, I'm not even sure if this is 100% accurate if we look at sales or whatever. But in my mind, Lamentations of the Flame Princess was like the so it wasn't the flagship for the OSR because most people still play some version of basic D&D, right? But it was like the largest independent sort of retro clone, the largest retro game, or at least the most prominent and visible retro game that tried to do something new. And in the wake of that sort of fall, I mean, he's not out, right? Like he just brought out a few newer modules, but it's nowhere near his former power. This is of course also related to like SAC S getting canceled, right?
Yeah.
But Lamentations of the Flame Princess at least tried to do crazy, unconventional things. That's why Zarkov Kowalski is such a good match for that label, right? But this was not pretty covers, or not just of pretty covers or weird layout art. This was actual like, we're gonna be revolutionary. It's going to be a dungeon, but it will not be fun. You know, you'll die because of bookkeeping or whatever other crazy shit, right? So this was again, there's a difference between people that are genuinely innovative and this newer era when you have the rise of what again, this is all Patrick Stewart's fault, what he is termed art punk. That's become the I'm not even sure if it's dominant, but again, it is the most visible and it is the trendy stuff because all of the Labyrinth Lord players or OSE, this is all so vanilla and boring that nobody even notices it. If you tell a story about like how you it's a new dungeon with orcs, yeah, nobody cares, right? But this stuff, this is the most visible. And you're right. I talked about this with I think it was Settembrini on his podcast that I think Patrick Stewart is one of those people that is genuinely qualified enough to innovate, or he's creative enough so that he can innovate in areas of like layout. He has creative ideas. He might not be able to implement them fully all the time, but most of the time he does implement them. And just the the work that he produces is just in general beautifully written, unique, creative, etc. Right? That's Patrick Stewart is not the problem. The problem is everybody who tries to imitate that vague style, based again on rules that are not explicitly codified. That is not Patrick Stewart. And what you see is that it's just shit because there's no underlying understanding of what D&D even is. Again, as you say, most of these people probably don't play that much or that well, and they the focus on all that creativity, the result is it also attracts a certain type of people, and it's not a type of person that is generally that interested in all of the quote unquote boring elements of D&D, the bookkeeping, the encumbrance,
light and stuff like that.
Yeah. So all of that seems boring, and if you want your quick dopamine fix, then you'll get rid of it. But what you actually discover if you play D&D for a prolonged period of time is all of those elements are actually very important. They add so much. They add a lot of depth and nuance to the game, and omitting it ultimately leaves you with an experience that's just much more shallow. So I think the focus is just that this art punk stuff has attracted a lot of people that don't really know what Dungeons and Dragons is or what it's supposed to be played like. Although they'll have opinions on it, but they don't really care either. So they'll just start. What they think that D&D is that you just have these crazy, super creative ideas or whatever, graphic design, and what you get is dungeons that are idiotic or banal in the case of Morkborg, and you just notice that the whole craft of dungeon design is just completely lost. And that's one of the reasons why I tried to I hosted my No Art Punk competition, is to kind of like guide people back in a very offensive and provocative manner, but it was like meant to illustrate the pitfalls of the current approach.
Yeah, so I have an opinion about it because I recently talked with my friend. Like we game together for 16 years now, and we have this opinion that OSR probably ended. That what we have right now, it's not the OSR. First of all, because it was never supposed to be the mainstream of D&D, and right now it kind of aims to be it, I think. And second part is that we get overwritten with modules which are not exactly modules, because they are creating these weird worlds, weird situations, and like over the top random cases where it really pushes you to completely obey to the module, and you cannot play with it. For example, when I was playing going through Forbidden Otherworlds, so when I was running it from Zarkov Kowalski, I was able to basically put it anywhere in any setting and have it, and even some parts of it I changed it because I wanted to have it more of the setting of the flavor of the setting that I was running it. But right now we have modules where you have completely obey, and I think that's also why I'm not the biggest fan of Zach's work, because even though I like to read it, I like some of his ideas. But his work is very, I would say, oppressive in these terms, that you really have to completely obey to his ideas and his work, and he's starting to get and his products are getting the control about what will happen at your table, or how your adventure will look like, so how your game will look like, because these weird ideas are really pushing the control to the side of the module. And
I definitely have an opinion on
okay.
Zach's stuff, but let's first so into the question of like, is the OSR dead, which is a question that a lot of like people that are extremely salty ask every year. Oh, is it dead? Now, well, I think I'm not sure. It kind of depends on what you define as the OSR. from what I can tell, there is still there's definitely still, like, I think the OSR as a single unified body sort of died, or as a sort of as an envelope under which 100 disparate visions that were all sort of going in the same direction. I think that has sort of ended, because now you see the whatever Troika or Morkborg stuff that is basically too divergent from what somebody like Gabor Lux would consider the OSR to really be compatible anymore. I think it was sort of held together. All the archetypes were herded together by Lamentations of the Flame Princess, right? And when that fell apart, these new some of these new iterations, they're not really they're not really they don't really have the same implicit gaming standards. And I think, well, whenever somebody says it's dead, I always point to the $190,000 Kickstarter for OSC, which is a better, like just a reprint of I think it's Menser BX with better layout and more bullet points.
But they also right now released the new box set which is basically the same what they did right now, but with the different cover on the box. And
oh yeah, that's classic. That does mean it's end stage stuff, because that stuff never lasts long. But yeah, I think there will this OSR stuff will probably not. We're going to be around anyway, right? If it's again, OSC is very commercial, but it does manage to attract a lot of new players from 5e, and hopefully some part of those new players, I think the most dedicated ones, will always be interested in figuring out what the origins of ideas are, and so in that way, I think part of you'll inevitably end up with certain configurations, as long as there is an interest in OSR gaming. That's as long as it is alive and you have new players. Then what once was the OSR, like this really old school approach of more dungeon crawling and more challenge oriented gameplay, a more random generation, that sort of stuff. I don't think that's going to be going away anytime soon. So I'm positive about that. About Zach, the more I learn about D&D, the less respect I have for the stuff he puts out, and that has again to do with what you mentioned. This is a person who clearly has ideas, but then puts almost no effort into integrating those ideas into the framework of D&D. And it's again also the same. I consider him in a way the originator of like this art punk philosophy, even though or this art punk trend, right? Even though Patrick coined the phrase and made a bunch of qualifications for it that made no sense. But with Zach, it's like you see somebody who has ideas, but it's just there is no there's very little understanding of the of the underlying game of Dungeons and Dragons, and there's often a sort of reductionist approach to it too, where it just goes like, oh, it just works like this. There was a discussion between him and Milan, and he had made a one-page dungeon. I hate one-page dungeons, by the way. A one-page dungeon of the Caves of Chaos in Keep of the Borderlands, right? And then he said, "This is just as good. I have stripped away all the unnecessary bits, and then you can just reduce it to one page, like the Caves of Chaos." But like all of these exercises, they only work if you have a sort of reductionist approach, and you can kind of tell the more you read older stuff is that he very often doesn't really understand and has no interest in understanding again the way the game used to work. And again, some of his stuff is definitely not bad. It is a creative person, and it is certainly better than a lot of the shit that comes out now. But yeah, no, I never got interested. I haven't followed any of his Cube World stuff. My knowledge of Zach stops with frostbitten and mutilated, I think, which I will probably re-review at some point. But yeah, that's my assessment, and I don't think he'll get better.
I think my personal opinion on him is very similar to you, that he really puts aside how the D&D works, and I really encountered this when I was running a Maze of the Blue Medusa, because we have completed it and finished it, and
that is written by Patrick Stewart, though. I don't
and
think it was,
both of them.
yeah.
Them.
Oh, was he editing? Okay, all right. I'll again. I haven't reviewed it yet. That one I'm kind of excited about, but continue.
So I think that my best, the most what I like from Zax is when he can put his creative work, but not force me to obey to his vision of the setting of the world, etc. So, for example, I really like his bestiaries. His monsters are really great. I like them. And I like him for something that he's not really known for, and I like him for his random tables. And I think he creates a good random tables, which are often very helpful, for example, to generate some new situation, and they are fine because he's then close to 1 or 2 or 3 sentences and cannot spam you with a lot of crazy ideas. So,
well,
so that's what I like.
He's not logoraic, right? He's not overly verbose. Rather, I think again the opposite. Like his random tables are good as a sort of creativity aid. I'll definitely say that. There, I think
he can spark an adventure idea with a one input in the random table. And
And Red and Pleasant Land, I think, which I also ended up flunking because it wasn't very well implemented than for a lot of the content, which was pretty good. But I distinctly recall the random tables in that one were pretty good. I think the demons or something that he had in that bestiary were also kind of awesome. And there was a sort of you don't really see it that obviously it's not new, but you don't see it that often, where all of the monsters in his setting, they had underlying, they had relations with each other, and that immediately helps to create a sort of that helps give your weird Alice in Wonderland Redux setting. It helps give it a little bit more grounding, if at least in that world, too, the creatures can relate among themselves. But that's kind of my opinion. It's definitely creative, but there is a sort of there's a sort of overly simplistic approach to adventure writing. He made one. You probably read Vornheim, right?
Yes.
There was one. I think the best adventure in that one, was a toolbox. But the best little adventure there was the immortal zoo of Bing Fang or something. It was called. It was a little maze, and it had all these. It had all these creative monsters in there, and I think the keeper was a nightingale, and it would open the cages one by one. So you would be trapped in the maze trying to get out while the monsters were released, right? So great idea. But then again, but that's also all it is. There's no consideration of like, okay, maybe I'll put whatever. I'll put some secret doors here, or I'll put all of the whole treasure meta, the whole light sources meta, the whole encumbrance stuff, like all these elements that are part of dungeon exploration. That's all like thrown in the bin. So it's really it's sanded down to the point where it's just that idea. Now, granted, I think in that case it would probably work, but like that sort of I think illustrates his approach to module writing specifically, that it's too simple.
Yeah, and just to comment also on Patrick, I again agree that I really like reading his stuff. I think he can spark some great ideas by just reading because it's enjoyable. It's really nice to me to read his work because he's a good writer. I have to admit that and this is something that people can't emulate actually, because if you're not a good writer and you haven't practiced it, and then all of these art punk crazy ideas are really tough to imitate.
Yes, yes, it's you can get away with making something that's fairly conventional and has one or two good ideas, but yeah, with the art punk stuff, I think I mean, if you couch it in beautiful, creative language, you can kind of trick people into believing it for a while. But if you use
until they will play it, actually.
Yeah, but that's what writers do all the time, right? I don't mean that in a malicious, like snarky fashion. I mean that in the like the most sincerest way, where good fantasy authors or good science fiction authors can basically sell you ridiculous ideas that make no sense, but they can take you along. They can couch that in a veneer of plausibility or in beautiful language, or they can trick you in a way that it doesn't have to make sense, right? So they get away with it, and they get you to accept that weird thing, and they sell that to you basically. So yeah, and I think in that sense, Patrick Stewart is pretty good. I haven't read that much of him, right? I know Deep Carbon Observatory. I really liked his remastered edition, because I felt that entire remastered edition was sort of a concession to the people that actually play D&D, because it didn't really go into, it wasn't like stuffed with more art. It just tried to make the module more usable.
Yes, I think that the biggest upgrade was the map. Yeah. I think like that was such a big upgrade for me that I thought that it's only worth buying to get the map.
Yes, it almost feels like an olive branch, right? So yeah. It's like, here you go. Losers that actually play D&D, like, here you go, it's something for you too. And yeah, no, so of course that's good. If all of the innovation was based on testing the adventure and making it easier for somebody who buys it to actually run it, and that's great.
Yeah. And also on the market of the OSR, I also have one comment that I think like it's like the market of the smartphones right now. Like, we are pushing another model every week, and then we forget about it and push another model. So yeah. I have this comparison that is very similar for me right now.
I think it's even worse that they make the modules that are not meant to be played, and at some point you get you have designs that are not even meant to be read, that are just art, with these fucking navel gazing articles that are just regurgitated crap from like 8 years ago. Like, I don't care, fuck you, go away. How much money does it make? 60,000 or something horrible. I have to crawl through broken glass to get 5.5K so I can buy it like dried rice that I can eat while I write Palace. But these fuckers get 60K. So I can get porridge for the orphans that I make them draw the art for, like in my basement. Okay. No, but it is it is a little bit decadent, but I would say don't despair just yet. There are also not everything has fallen. There are like still plenty of communities and outposts in the OSR that do their own thing. They don't give a shit, and it'll probably keep enduring. And I think after this, whatever the hell this weird phase is, after that has gone by, I think like enough of the OSR will remain to just maybe start thinking about having some sort of common place where people can interact again, because I think that's been one of the major arguments in favor of like that the OSR is dead, is that there's no single common frame of like, there's no single forum for debate, there's no single hangout place. But even that doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, we had an OSR before, whatever, Google Plus or Reddit/OSR or the OSR Discord. God help you. right? Before all that stuff, it was just it was a few influential bloggers that would. It was a sort of a feudal system, and I don't mind going back to that, where you have a few big blogs that kind of that have their own circles of influence, but that also serve as like traffic where other people can meet. I see no reason why in that form it cannot keep continuing for quite a while. So don't give up hope yet, guys.
Yeah, I can say that I'm a part of Lamentations, so the Flame Princess Facebook group, and I can tell that it really like warms my heart when I see that people actually play what they are buying, because this group is one of the smallest, I would say, from all of these OSR fandom groups. But actually, people who are there, they are sharing the experience of the models, and also what is cool for me is that I know that you have your harsh opinion about I think last year's release of the Lamentations modules, but some of them were cool for me. I think I
was not super negative. I thought I wasn't like. I wasn't that gaddy. I think I actually gave out a 6 out of 5, or no, sorry, a 3 out of 5 for Sepnentrum Frung. I can't fucking pronounce that. Whatever. The one with the monks. Okay, the monks in the beer. I thought that one was. My problem with that was basically that it's okay to, and I haven't checked out the new stuff just yet.
I have it laying on my book already. Read 2 of them, so I can say that 2 of them are very not OSR, more Call of Cthulhu's adventure type of adventures but this doesn't bother me.
No, and Lamentations was always sort of edging in that direction. I think I think I've written about that for a while, but so my original position was that in the beginning, Lamentations of the Flame Princess wasn't really actually about what it said it was about, right? Because it was a sort of all-star cast, and everybody was just allowed to do their own shit. But now, for a while over time, you do see Lamentations as a sort of aesthetic, or as you see it get more direction and traction. So there's more focus on the historical stuff, the horror stuff. There's also the slight ironic detachment every once in a while where they're sort of taking the piss with you. But yeah, you see those elements get in there a little bit more. What is it? Big Puppet and that Black Moth. That one with the monks was okay. It was just too long. I noticed this was a new author, right? So I could just tell that he, at some point, he did one room and that was 4 pages long or something. I was like, this doesn't need to be this long. It
just was a stakeout. It was a stakeout with this monk. I know what you're talking about, because I also read the
It's a monk in a granary that tries to throw a sack of grain on your head. It shouldn't require all these super complicated rules for what's going to be fairly straightforward. But the ideas were kind of cool. Again, there's always very strong visual imagery in. I don't mean the art, which was good, but like I mean the sort of the imagery that it creates of caverns underground where you fight these zombies that are full of hops, and at some point, what is it? You even find the ancient Roman zombies or something, and I'm like, that's cool. That's something I want to do, right? When I play Lamentations of the Flame Princess, I want to go, fuck yeah, okay. This is this weird, terrifying adventures where a lot of us will probably not make it. We will not live to see, the next adventure. Yeah, it's cool.
And I think also what this adventure, I think it called Fermentum Nigrum Dei Sepultis in Latin, I think, yeah. So, but what it shows is like you can make historic stuff cool, and that's what recently Lamentations is doing, and I really salute them for it. That they show that you can do some cool stuff, cool adventures in our historical setting, and I really like it because I really enjoy it. Yeah. Okay guys, here we had a short call drop, so we're starting back where we ended and conversation continues.
Alright,
it's starting. Alright. Okay, so it dropped for a second there, but we can go back. Okay, so we finished with Fermentum Nigrum Dei Sepulti. I have checked the title in the meantime.
Yeah, I noticed. I was like, oh man, good memory. Fuck.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, like I said, I like what Lamentations does with the historical setting. I like it. I really like it because it doesn't make me feel like I have to adjust to many things, and it's really modular for me to have many teams, many ideas put into the historical setting. But you also wanted to talk about this that what I said, that the adventure makes me do some stuff at the table. Like for example, when I told about Zach's stuff, that he makes me run something on the table that he wants. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, you said specifically because it's so strange and unconventional, right? And you also mentioned Patrick Stewart. I think I'm more of a fan of people just letting trying to communicate like their vision, than trying to keep things generic so it's easier to adjust. I think in general, the improvement that you get in quality and the purity of what you put out there, right, is worth the trade-off, because in general there aren't that many modules I think that would be very hard to convert to generic D&D, and like for the few remaining ones that are hard to convert, I don't know. It's sort of I always appreciate the boldness of it, right? When Geoffrey McKinney came out with Carcosa, there's absolutely no way that fits with a vanilla fantasy setting, right? But just reading it, I got inspired enough to actually try it out and to run it for whatever, somewhere between 30 and 40 sessions, and that was a fucking amazing time. So I don't know. I think in general it's probably worth introducing a few hiccups to conversion, since people are going to be tinkering with your module anyway. If you can put something down that just that basically inspires the DM enough to want to run it, right? Because that's what you're like, all of that fluff stuff is like kind of like a sales pitch that's meant to energize the DM, so that when he reads your scenario, that he gets excited. He thinks, and there's many ways to do that, right? And one of those ways is by just the trappings of it, right? The framing, the setting, right? The fantastical creation. So yeah, if you have that, again, in general, I'm sure there are examples when it goes too far or it's too strange. But in general, I'm an advocate of making things specific and interesting rather than generic and easier to convert.
Yeah, maybe I was too harsh, but for example, Deep Carbon Observatory is one of my favorite modules, actually.
Yes.
I really like it. Really enjoyed running it, but but Deep Carbon Observatory is very D&D like, I would say, yes. Especially this remastered version. So yeah, I like it. It was fun to play. It was fun to run. But my problem was, for example, with Maze of the Blue Medusa, because I compared these two modules because they are written in a similar manner, for me at least. Because, for example, both of them have their setting, and yes. In Deep Carbon Observatory, the setting is really, it's not so dense that you really have to adjust everything. Like you don't have to build eons of history in your, for example, I don't know, 17th century England or Forgotten Realms or old world Warhammer or anything.
Yeah.
You don't have to build up because when I was reading Maze of the Blue Medusa, there was like eons ago this happened, this kind of civilization, this kind of persons, such stuff happened, and all of this dungeon has this theme of this history, and you cannot skip it.
Oh,
It's not
you actually
skippable
have
for
to
me.
use the history that they postulate. That's actually good. That means that the history that it's
Exactly,
not
exactly.
airless blathering. But yeah, I can imagine that you then have to like, oh, okay, shit. Now I need this. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So that's my that was my challenge, because it was really hard for me, for example, to use it in my adventure, because I had to spend a lot of hours to reimagine the setting, to place a different people or different histories or different teams inside the dungeon, to adjust it to the world, so it could at least be somehow logically connected to my adventure setting. And I didn't have this problem with Deep Carbon Observatory. It was really, really easy, and I praise it for it. So this is but with Maze of the Blue Medusa, I spent tons of time that will never come back to me. I have tons of notes just to have my adventure setting somehow connected. Yeah. So
Well,
that's my beef with this kind of stuff.
yeah, I haven't read it myself, so I can't comment on how extreme it is. I do completely agree with you that Deep Carbon Observatory is actually much more traditional than it makes itself out to be. Because you look at all the scratchy, scribbly art in the middle of this presentation, you go like, oh, okay, fancy man. But if you read it actually has a lot of like, it has tombs and fancy. It has giant animals and drow, right?
Yeah.
They're reimagined in a way, but a lot of it is still connected to core D&D in a very fundamental way, which is why like I liked it so much, right? And with these really extreme settings, it's I think it's a delicate balancing act, and depending on what the audience is, people will either experience a lot of difficulty adjusting your module, or like very little. We left Red Prophet Rises is very like bare bones, in a way that I actually enjoy, right? I think for definitely if you're going to do sword and sorcery, you don't need 3 million years of history, and you don't really need a complicated backstory, because the motivation is kind of primal, right? It's very very atavistic, okay, and the same in general is true of like most D&D modules. You don't need a incredibly complicated rationale for adventurers to go to some far off remote location inhabited by ancient evils or dangerous creatures filled with rumors of treasure. That's kind of all you need, right, for the most part. But with Palace, I have tried to do a little bit more with the backstory, but I did try to add at least a little bit of text where I explain, or at least I did add a few paragraphs where I sort of explain how to convert, or how to deal with some of the implications of the setting that the module takes place in, so that if you want to play, I do something really extreme in Age of Dusk, right? Like most of the gods are sort of dead, and that's something that most people's settings probably will not have. So I have devoted at least a paragraph to explaining what you can do to sort of like wiggle your way around it in a way that it doesn't do any violence to the module proper, but you don't have to institute these sweeping setting-wide changes in order to make it work.
Yeah, but this also sounds like a good adventure design, because you think about what kind of problems may people encounter when running your product. So yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So also when it comes to settings, I like settings, because I also played Carcosa and I enjoyed it. And
nice.
For example, when playing, not playing, but when reading Cret and Pleasant Land, I don't know how to run it. Like, this is something that I really enjoyed to read, but I don't know how to run it, how to play it. And I don't know if it's a matter of taste, if it's a matter of I don't know what I like, what I don't like. I like Alice in Wonderland, but I don't see how to play it, and that's
my answer was because sorry if there was more. I tend to interrupt people. I'm trying
no
to
problem,
break that habit. Okay. So with Alice in Wonderland, there is you can absolutely run one or at least or maybe even two adventures worth of hijinks in a weird land of unreality where things don't make sense. Because again, well, Gary Gygax did it, right? Like you have Dungeon Land and Beyond the Magic Mirror. These are two adventures that he brought out. So that works, and I think I acknowledged that in my review. But that was actually my greatest criticism of Red and Pleasant Land was that you have two extremely high level environments, these two giant castles that were the only thing that was really like properly fleshed out. But this is something that you can start tackling the murder of a vampire of these vampire lords basically when you would have to be 8th level or something. So yeah, what do you do before that? And I think my conclusion was you do nothing. Okay, you don't. There is not enough substance to Red and Pleasant Land to carry that weight or carry that ramp, right? There are not enough elements to it, or at least I guess maybe you could probably make it work. You would have to come up with a bunch of probably you have to. I think he described that too. You have to. There's a bunch of intrigues or petty feuds that go on between all of these vampires, and you get sent on various seemingly pointless fetch quests to find whatever a missing wocket, and then you get embroiled in some sort of like vampire temporal war that doesn't make sense. I agree that all of that stuff there was nowhere near enough focus on actually, I don't know, generating hooks or making interesting locations to explore in Red and Pleasant Land to kind of carry you over to the big showdown with the Red King and the Queen of Hearts. So I would agree, and I'm sure that there's people. Well, actually, there aren't that many people that have run very long campaigns in it. I checked. I mean, I'm sure Zach has, right? So, but for the most part, this seems to be a recurring trend.
Yeah. So I had a comment about settings. Okay, I remember it right now. So. In my opinion, a really good setting is a setting that I can play, for example, a campaign which will last a year. And this is something that I really want from a setting. I don't want 1 or 2 sessions experience, because this I can get from a module, for example. Like you will get an adventure, but often the modules are something that is not lasting only 1 or 2 sessions, or 1 or 2, or maybe, I don't know, 2, 3. But it has some consequences. For example, I really love it in Death Frost Doom that it has these consequences that can spark a campaign that will drag from a very long time in your adventure setting. And I don't see, for example, running a campaign inside a Red and Pleasant Land rather than I just see it as a curiosity, like in your game. I don't know.
It's. I don't know if I made the comparison, but yeah, it's like running a campaign in the elemental plane of fire, right? Yeah, it's cool if you go there for a short trip, but then I know. But I think I also toyed with this idea in probably maybe it was in a Carcosa review, but I have in my mind sort of 2 different models or phenotypes or whatever of a campaign setting, and one is like one sort of tries to work, and this is for D&D specifically, right? And number 1 basically doesn't violate any of the core assumptions of D&D and just gives you a lot of like content and Gygaxian building blocks to work with. So that, but you just play normal D&D in that. And a good example would be, well, the best example is obviously Greyhawk, but Forgotten Realms also works, or any of these sort of settings, right? These are settings that kind of go along with the theme of Dungeons and Dragons, and if they're very good, you can play in those not just a year, but like for decades, right? Because you can always usually if they're very good, they're also kind of open, but you've been given enough material so your mind can come up with automatically adventure ideas and seamlessly convert them or so that they work against the backdrop of that setting. I think a great example of a setting that allows you to do that has nothing to do with D&D, but it's a Warhammer 40K, right? I'm a huge fan. I used to play or used to run Dark Heresy for quite a while, and that's one of those universes where I feel it's almost never exhausted. I almost never feel that like, okay, my PCs have done all the interesting things there are to do in the 41st millennium in the galaxy. No, there's always more cool shit that they can do, right? So that's that for me, that's a really interesting that's an element of like a great campaign setting. But I talked about like these types, right? And there's also number 2, which I would put Carcosa under that envelope, is what you do. You make something that's very specific and much more narrow. The type of adventures that you'll have in there will be thematically they'll be a bit more narrow. Maybe you'll start tinkering with some of the assumptions under D&D, but the point is that they're kind of more, as you said, the author is more heavy-handed in pushing what he wants you to do with it, and those sorts of campaigns, they don't last quite as long, but they can be very interesting and absorbing. For example, again, Carcosa, I think Carcosa is pretty much like that. You have a more limited palette, right? You have a more limited set from which to with which to work, but if you can get it running, it really is like something else. It is very exciting. So yeah, that's what I would have to say about it. In general, campaign settings, I think it's been a while since I reviewed a proper campaign setting. I think as I get older and I read more, you're not as excited anymore when you come across something, particularly because so much has already been done, and as your frame of reference grows, you just go like, okay, that's from here. Like I also read a lot of books, right? But yeah, it might be something worth getting into. It's just what makes a good campaign setting. I haven't quite. I wouldn't be able to answer that with the same precision as I would be able to answer what makes a good module, for example.
Yeah. I can tell that also when getting older, I have this thing for setting that when I was younger, I loved Forgotten Realms, and now I hate it, for example, because it's a big zoop for me and of everything, and it's not connected at all. So that's my opinion. Okay, but I wanted to jump straight to your adventures because, like I said, I have played Red Prophet Rises. And we have, not we, but my game master connected it with Veins of the Earth. So we combined it, and that's how it was played. He combined it, and I really enjoyed this because this had a great sword and sorcery vibe for us. And I wanted to ask you about what was the idea behind the adventure, and is the reviewing of other modules helping you when thinking about your adventure, what you would have inside?
Cool. Yes, the original idea was definitely Aaron's, and it was going to be called Khazra's Unending Blood or something. And he just he contacted me after I did a review of like one of his earlier work, the chest it was called. Very charming little dungeon inside a magic chest that you find that you can just place anywhere. So I thought that was kind of neat. But so he gave me that idea, and I could see. I don't know how much he personally had intended it, but I could see from what he had written down this sort of like vision of this canyon with these savage tribesmen, but I just sort of turned that up to 11. So I rewrote large sections of the module. So like that vision of a blood-soaked spectacle was much more refined and pure. And as I mentioned before, I'm a big reader of sword and sorcery, more so than Aaron, and I'm also a huge fan of Warhammer. So I immediately thought of I don't know if you're familiar with Warhammer.
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. No, I immediately thought of Corn, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
it had
Corn
this vibe. Yeah,
and
definitely.
whatever various cultist group, like Conan the Barbarian, like this sort of stuff. Like I read that and I was like, this is what it's trying to do. And your second question kind of ties into that. Does reading hundreds and hundreds of modules make you better at writing them? Like in my case, I would say it very probably does. It's um, just having just knowing what is possible, right, or knowing what your options are can dramatically improve you. I've seen examples that work of modules that work really well, or writing that works really well, and I've seen examples that sort of that flounder and fail, which are just as important. And because I've read so much, I have in my mind, I just know that there are so many options or so many things that you can do that people are not always aware of, or so many elements that you can use when you make, for example, a classic dungeon. So I would say yes, absolutely. Reading, and I would also say playing other people's modules probably makes you better at writing them yourself, and it probably makes you a better DM too. So I'm all for that stuff.
Yeah, I can just say that this module sparked a 18 months campaign. So we
Oh,
had
I'm very glad to hear that. But did you I always hear that people skip they never get into they never find the dungeon in the pit of despair. Did you guys find that one too, or no, you didn't? No, no
Nope.
one goes there.
No, we went. We released these guys that were enslaved in the cells, and then we ran a revolt, and basically a lot of key characters from the canyon escaped, and the campaign was about hunting them. Then, so yeah, that's how it happened.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So and also I wanted to ask about the palace, your recent module, and just maybe not to give many spoilers because probably my friend will want to run it and I will be the player. So spare me the details. But
Yeah, do your gaming push-ups, okay?
yeah,
Get ready.
exactly. So some background about this adventure, because it's very not so many words on the drive-through page, at least. So what can people expect from this module?
They can expect absolute mayhem and horror and terror with this one. I based this on a very long time ago. I wrote like a little adventure synopsis on my blog, just some throwaway ideas. And later on in Carcosa, I actually made the original Palace of Unquiet Repose, which was, well, maybe 3 or 4 rooms are the same now, right? But that's like kind of like how I started. And now, like I find out this is a grand tomb adventure, okay, where you travel under the earth, searching for the necropolis, wherein lies well, not surviving because he's not alive, but wherein lies, when it was said to lie, like the great Uyu Jadmog, like the greatest of a vanquished race of sorcerers that were in their day so mighty that they quarreled with the gods themselves. So it's going to be a grand, horrific, tomb crawling adventure. It is very lethal. But
okay,
also,
so I have to ask this question because we in our group we have this scale that, like, from 1 to 10, how hard this module wants to fuck you. So where you would place your module on this scale from 1 to 10?
well, definitely below Tomb of Horrors, right? It's
Okay.
not above Tomb of Horrors. I would say it is. I'm trying to think of how to estimate it properly. It is very deadly,
Mm-hmm.
but it also gives you a lot of opportunities to use the environment to your advantage, or gain some sort of like tactical advantage against your opponents. So I would say if you're good at that type of D&D that I enjoy the most, which is not necessarily D&D that relies on encyclopedic knowledge of the rules or bookkeeping or whatever, but like more like D&D where when you have to come up with solutions on the fly and very quickly too, right? This sort of seat of the pants, bold, dangerous, creative D&D. If that's your forte, then you might get away with it. Then you'll probably like it a lot. But if you just go in there expecting to be able to hack everything to death, you're probably going to fucking die.
Okay, so prepare some ideas for backup characters.
Yeah, that's there's a whole roster of NPCs in the of hirelings in the module, and that's also for a reason.
Yeah, that's also again good character design. Sorry, not adventure design, not character design. So yeah, that's also something that people often forget to think about. Yeah. Okay, so maybe slowly wrapping it up to not keep you here too long, but I wanted also briefly talk about Zarkov at the end because you seem to be a fan of his. I am definitely, and I wanted to ask you, like, because you often say that he's an underrated adventure designer, and I wanted to ask you, what's his biggest advantage in your eyes? Like, what do you like about him the most?
It's hard to find one. He has so many. I'll just start talking, and maybe I'll figure out what his greatest advantage is. Right? No, I'm just continually in awe at Zarkov Kowalski's ability to generate within only a few pages. Basically, he makes what are essentially little sandboxes with NPCs and areas that all sort of interconnect, and then he unleashes the players into that delicate ecosystem to wreak havoc and mayhem. And it never feels like he's railroading you in any particular direction. He always considers like certain options. So it's. I think first of all, his ability to condense. Number one is his creativity, because he is genuinely a person with off the wall ideas, with who tries non-conventional things, but they work. And he knows how to turn those ideas into something gameable. You can also tell that he thinks about the implications of how that would work. And number three is his ability to condense those ideas into a compact format, where it's and you see this in he has so many good modules, right? What is it? 1,000 Dead Babies is very good. Gnomes of Levnek. You had Scenic Dunwich, and the one I last Under the Waterless Sea too, or something.
Yeah,
it's just a crazy idea, but it kind of works. And yeah, I would say his greatest ability is that he is genuinely a very creative individual, but he knows how to turn those ideas into something gameable. And you can tell he considers that the ramifications, always play tests, even before that became sort of more of a dogma in the OSR, in I would say our corner of the OSR, that you should play test your shit. So greatest respect for him.
I can say that for me, his biggest advantage is that he's creating a great adventure environments. Like I really like location-based modules, like when you have this weird place, or not necessarily weird, but a place where people connect. There are relationships between people, things, or some situations, and he's really great at doing it. Like Scenic Dunsmouth, like for example, going through Forbidden Otherworlds or 1,000 Dead Babies. These are really good examples. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll also say, I think in general, I would say my tastes, my current tastes are more directed towards like the traditional format. So yeah, again, actual fucking dungeons, right? But
Hmm.
again, Kowalski, he's kind of a modern author in the sense that I feel his work is influenced as much by Warhammer Fantasy adventure modules or Call of Cthulhu, right? As it
Hmm.
is by D&D. You don't really find that much like these traditional vanilla style dungeons, 30 rooms, secret doors, etc., etc., etc. But even in that new format, I think he's managed to extract what people are looking for in a role playing game, and like the end result is usually very impressive. So yeah.
Uh,
No.
I actually asked him when I was talking to him. I actually asked him about this his adventures and his ideas, and he told me that about the dungeons. That what you have said is that he's not doing them because there is already a 40 years backlog of dungeons and some really good ones. So he doesn't want to duplicate the ideas or because there is a lot of good dungeons already. So he's searching for something that wasn't done before. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think the correct approach in his case, and it's also again that's the difference, right? It's this awareness of what's already been done. Yeah. So no, good to know.
Yeah. Okay. So I will maybe wrap it up here. But at the end of our conversation, I wanted to ask you about maybe just shortly telling if anyone will want to reach you or find you somewhere. Are there any places besides your blog and that people can find you?
Um, let's see. Yeah, besides my blog, I'm sometimes present in. There's a YouTuber called Aaron the Pedantic. It's a little gaming channel, and he does among other things a show with Venture Satanis. But that
Mhm.
guy has a Discord server. I'm sometimes in that Discord server. I check that one out every once in a while, so you can reach me there. Um, I'm occasionally present at the forum for 10footpole.org, so Bryce's forum, and
Mhm.
very infrequently I can also be found at the Knights and Knaves Ale House, where I will rarely comment, but I do lurk there. So yeah, these are some of my hangouts in the OSR.
Okay. And if people want to have your adventures, then only Drive to RPG or somewhere else?
Currently, it's only drive-through RPG. I think we experimented with putting it on itch.io or something. We might want to look into that because I know that the fees that they ask are lower. Um, but yeah, currently it's drive-through RPG, and I would say keep your eyes peeled for the No Art Punk compilation, which is scheduled to come out this month.
Oh
So it
yes,
should be.
because I totally forgot it because you have done this no art bank contest and you will be releasing the adventures. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, of
Okay.
course. Well, I don't know if you're if you have to go, but I'll.
No. You
I
can tell, right?
Oh
Sure.
no. Yes, I think it ties back into like what we were talking about earlier. That I feel that a large segment of the OSR, the sort of art punk guys, they've kind of lost track of what is like best in life, what makes D&D the most.
I got that reference. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be disappointed if you wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But no, like what is most important in Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not off the cuff ideas, right? No, it's a sort of craftsmanship, and so that's why I started my no art punk adventure design competition, and the objective was basically that it could be for any fairly conventional old school system, right? And you it had to be a dungeon adventure first of all, so like the most traditional format, more 30 rooms, but some people have done more, some people have done less. And the idea was that you're only allowed to come up with one creature, one one new magic item, and one new spell. And the idea behind that was that it sort of like forced you to learn and understand the existing framework of Dungeons and Dragons before you actually start innovating. So you have to listen to Bach and Beethoven first before you start making your own music. Okay, but that was the idea, and I got more people than I thought would enter. I think about 18 or 19 people sent in their contributions, and the best 8, I've gathered them together, and I will be bringing them out in a PDF compilation entitled No Art Punk, which will be available on drive-thru for pay what you want, and the proceeds will go to the autism.org research charity. That's not a meme. I'm actually doing that, and probably later on in the in the coming year, I'll probably also bring out the companion, which will have all of the entries that didn't win. Well, because a lot of those were very good too. I was blown away actually by what people can do with a simple framework. But I guess that sort of illustrates why it's so good. There were people tried to innovate then, but they weren't. They couldn't take the easy way out. So you see people try to do unusual things with like the map. They would make vertical maps, or they would partially submerge their dungeons, or one of them had I think a time crystal. So you see that people are kind of driven. They're forced to innovate in a far more profound way that engages more with what D&D is all about if you kind of limit them like that. So yeah, I thought it was very exciting, and the results are really very good. The 8 dungeons that'll be coming out, most of those are completely playable, play tested, and probably gonna have a good time. So yeah.
Yeah, people often forget that sometimes putting boundaries make your creativity spark. Actually, so
I would say most of the time, right? There was a term. I don't know if you watch Red Letter Media, but they talk about George Lucas, and they talk about the original Star Wars, where he would have all of these limitations in budget. There were all these problems while filming it, and that actually, under that pressure, he created something that is a very enduring legacy. It's a piece of shit now. I mean, the current stuff is a piece of shit. But like the original stuff, it still has a sort of like energy and a boldness to it. So sort of the art from adversity, I think, is the way to go. So yeah, having those boundaries and having those rules, it kind of pushes people to excel, to really think about the material they're engaging with. And if they can't rely on like fancy graphics or layout gimmicks to pull the people in, you kind of have to really think like, okay, but what can I do? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think it's a really good place to wrap it up. I want to thank you for this conversation because it was really a pleasure. Exactly what I thought it would be. So thank you, really.
Oh, thanks a lot for calling me out and interviewing me. I had a great time too.